Welcome to the latest episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. This is episode 146, myth number 7, gluten-free diets are healthier for everyone. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. I am your host, registered dietitian nutritionist Shelley Rael. And today I am continuing the summer series of common nutrition myths and debunking those common nutrition myths. And this one's a big one. As much as this has been around for a long time, people still don't get it. The idea that gluten-free diets are healthier for everyone. All right, so let me dive into this one. Let me do an explanation of the myth. There is widespread belief that gluten-free diets are healthier, inherently healthier than a diet that contains gluten. And many people have this mistaken belief that cutting out gluten in their diet leads to weight loss, leads to improved digestion, leads to increased energy, leads to less inflammation, leads to a whole host of health benefits. And there's an explosion of gluten-free products on the market. So it's easy to see why this myth has gained so much traction. Now, let me rewind about 25 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, where people who needed to eat gluten-free, and I'll get into the details of that, had a hard time finding gluten-free options of common baked goods and grains and pastas. But now it's everywhere, it seems like. Now, let me first explain what gluten is. Gluten is a protein that is found in wheat, barley, and rye. And this protein is what is responsible for the elasticity in dough that helps it rise and maintain its shape. So if you've ever tried to roll out pizza dough, for example, this is one of my more frustrating experiences, but I make pizza dough on a regular, is you go to spread that pizza dough out and it snaps back. Maybe it doesn't snap back, but it shrinks back. So you got to work it. That's that gluten. That is gluten that is causing that elasticity in the dough. Now, people have questioned me saying, well, no, that's carbohydrates. Pasta and grains and bread are carbohydrates. Now, that's a whole other episode I've addressed in the past, that carbohydrates are a nutrient, not a food group. But grains do have protein in them. And those proteins have different names. Different grains have different proteins. One of those proteins is that gluten. So when you see air bubbles in bread, if you look at bread closely, you may not see it too much, but look at it. There's a lot of air bubbles in there, air pockets. And the reason those air bubbles or pockets may be big or not so big is because of the strength of that gluten. So, as I said, that's responsible for their elasticity in dough and helping it rise and maintain its shape. Now, for those with celiac disease, not celiacs, celiac disease, or something called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, consuming gluten can lead to a serious health issue. So this is why gluten-free diets are crucial for those individuals. However, there is a misconception that gluten-free is synonymous with healthier, and it is spread beyond these groups. So this idea that gluten-free is healthier has spread outside the celiac community. So many people without these two conditions, the celiac disease and the non-celiac gluten sensitivity, have adopted gluten-free diets, believing it will lead to better health outcomes. Marketing, celebrity endorsements often contribute to this belief, making gluten-free seem like a health trend rather than a medical necessity. So is this really true? So let me dive into this more. So the truth here. The truth is gluten-free diets are medically necessary for individuals with celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So for these individuals, consuming gluten can cause severe health issues, such as intestinal damage, nutrient malabsorption, and a range of GI or gastrointestinal and non-GI symptoms. So there's non-GI symptoms that can occur as well. That can be things like osteoporosis or skin rashes or other things. However, for the general population, there is no evidence suggesting that a gluten-free diet provides additional health benefits. In fact, removing gluten from your diet without medical necessity can sometimes lead to nutrient deficiencies. So celiac disease affects about 1% of the population worldwide. Now, you may think it's a lot more than that because unlike 20 years ago where individuals just worked around their condition in the sense of they would go out, and when they would go out to eat, they would avoid places that had potential concerns for them or knew how to pick and choose things on a menu, for example. Now it feels like everybody has to announce every health condition every time they go out. But when someone with celiac disease consumes gluten, celiac disease is an autoimmune disease. So this means their immune system is attacking the body, in this case, the small intestine. And this can lead damage in the small intestine, and it causes damage where the small intestine is where most of our nutrients in our diet are absorbed. So the stomach breaks it down and things that's passed on to the small intestine, and different parts of the small intestine absorb different nutrients. And when that damage occurs in the small intestine with that gluten, for those with celiac disease, the part that absorbs the nutrients becomes inflamed and swollen, and so they're not able to absorb those nutrients. So again, it can lead to a nutrient deficiency, not because they're not eating the nutrients, but because the small intestine is not able to absorb it. And then non-celiac gluten sensitivity, while it's not well defined, it's not celiac disease, but it can cause symptoms similar to those with celiac disease, but without the intestinal damage. So for those individuals, a gluten-free diet can alleviate the symptoms and improve quality of life. Now, here's the thing. For the vast majority of people, gluten is not harmful. Whole grains like wheat, barley, and rye are rich sources of fiber, vitamins, and minerals. And cutting these out of your diet without a medical reason can lead to a less balanced diet and potential nutrient deficiencies. Now, I have to say, too, that I have observed and heard firsthand from people who have seen where, like, for example, servers at a restaurant. I work with a lot of individuals who work in restaurants as servers or in the back of the house, and customers will insist they need gluten-free. But the thing is most kitchens aren't set up to have that fully separated. So when people say, oh, it's no big deal, well, then they're not celiac, because it is a big deal. Cross-contamination is a big deal. And then other times where servers have said, well, they point out everything that's gluten-free, tell people what's gluten-free on the menu. It's marked on the menu. But then when it comes to dessert, no problem. They don't need to worry about being gluten-free for some reason. Additionally, somebody who has celiac disease or can't have gluten will not be drinking beer because of the barley. And anything that has wheat in it is not going to be able to be consumed either. So any type of alcohol that has a wheat mash is not going to be acceptable. And people are surprised by this. They're like, alcohol has gluten in it? Well, it can. And people with celiac disease, so not all alcohol has gluten in it, depends on which one you're talking about, But if somebody has celiac, that microscopic amount, I don't even know how we measure gluten, but that amount in such small quantities can still have a negative effect on people with celiac disease. So if people say that they're celiac or they need to avoid gluten, but they're drinking bourbon, probably not celiac disease. They probably don't have it. But, I just kind of let that one go. People like to make up their conditions and then make exceptions when it works for them. All right, so let's talk about supporting evidence here. Several scientific studies have shown that gluten-free diets do not offer significant health benefits to those without gluten-related disorders. So I think I've made that pretty clear. So gluten-containing grains like wheat, barley, and rye are rich in nutrients. Rich in nutrients. So there's fiber, there's vitamins, there's minerals. And when these grains are removed from the diet, they can be replaced with gluten-free alternatives that may be lower in these nutrients and higher in sugar and fat to improve taste and texture. So in some cases, a gluten-free diet could be less healthy. I remember years ago, I want to say it was in Consumer Reports, but I don't remember, is they had a regular muffin and a gluten-free muffin, and comparing it side by side, the gluten-free muffin was higher in fat, higher in sugar, higher in calories, lower in nutrients than compared to the regular gluten-containing counterpart. So in order to help some of these things still taste good, some of these things need to be added, not just with gluten-free products, but fat-free products or reduced fat products have salt and sugar added to them. So salt, sugar, and fat are three things that can be added to foods to help make them taste better, especially when they've been adjusted from their original state. So, let me talk about some of the science, or more specifically, a review of the science. A review published in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics found that gluten-free diets could lead to lower intakes of essential nutrients, including fiber, iron, and several B vitamins. Because many gluten-free products are made from refined grains and starches, which lack the nutrition benefits of the whole grains. And then, as I said, some gluten-free products have added sugars and fats to compensate for the lack of gluten, which can negatively impact overall health. So I'm not saying the lack of gluten impacts the overall health, it's the added sugars and fats. And it is worth noting that gluten-free products can be more expensive than their gluten-containing counterparts, which may not be a justifiable cost for those without a medical need for gluten-free diets. The financial burden, combined with the potential for a less nutritious diet, suggests that going gluten-free without medical necessity may not be the best choice for most people. So let's go with some practical tips here. What should you focus on for a healthy diet? Well, I want to emphasize a balanced approach that includes whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and healthy fats. And I want to emphasize this. Plenty of grains are out there that don't contain gluten. Quinoa, rice, cornmeal. So corn tortillas don't have wheat in them. If they do, that's not really, I don't know. I've never seen a corn tortilla that has wheat in them. Oats are naturally gluten-free, although oats may have some cross-contamination during processing. But here's the thing, is people start freaking out. I have to eat gluten-free. What can I eat? You can eat fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats, yogurt, most cheeses. It's not that significant that you have nothing to eat. And I remember a couple summers ago, somebody was having a party at their house and they had the bag of corn tortilla chips and it said gluten-free on the front. And she said, "I'm so sorry, I mistakenly bought the gluten-free tortilla chips." And I didn't really say anything because, I wasn't going to get into it there. And then one of the other people there said, "Are all corn tortilla chips gluten-free?" Yes, they are. All corn tortilla chips are gluten-free, even if it doesn't have that label on it. All peanut butter is gluten-free, and it has that label on it. Some brands listed as gluten-free, which, if your peanut butter has gluten in it, I would really question what's going on. Certainly a peanut butter sandwich will have gluten, but peanut butter should not have gluten in it. So what are some practical meal ideas for going gluten-free if you need to? Wanting to have a balanced approach, wanting to have a healthy diet. And of course, people with celiac are going to already know what to do. But here's the thing. Breakfast, oatmeal, berries, chia seeds. So as I said, oats are naturally gluten-free. So oats themselves don't have gluten, but they may have contamination during the processing. So I tell people you need to look for gluten-free oats if you have celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. Lunch. How about a quinoa salad with some greens, cherry tomatoes, cucumbers, a dressing of pretty much any type? Quinoa is gluten-free. It's high in protein, high in fiber, and it's certainly a nutritious option. When I make quinoa, I make a big batch, even if I'm not going to eat it all at that one time, and can get 2 or 3 meals out of it. So instead of oatmeal, one morning I'll have that leftover quinoa or a quinoa salad. And then for dinner, a stir fry, brown rice, no gluten in it, veggies, chicken, tofu, fish. Brown rice, again, naturally gluten-free, white rice, gluten-free. It's rice. It's not wheat, barley, or rye. So remember, variety and balance. And if you're considering a gluten-free diet, think if you really need it. Check with a healthcare professional. If you're having GI issues, certainly check with a healthcare professional to ensure it's necessary and what is going on. You want to have a maintained or a well-rounded diet, a nutritional diet. So let me give you a few more tips here to help with a balanced diet. Whether you have gluten or not. That's the big thing. Gluten or not, you can still do this. Number 1, have a variety of whole grains. So if you don't need to avoid gluten, you can enjoy pretty much all the grains like whole wheat, barley, and rye. But if you need to avoid gluten, boy, there's so many. As I said, some of these already. Quinoa, brown rice, millet, sorghum. Sorghum is, look it up, check it out. Sorghum can be like a syrup-like sweetener, but it's also a grain. Number 2, focus on naturally gluten-free foods. Naturally gluten-free foods. All fruits, all vegetables, all legumes, all nuts, all seeds, dairy, and most proteins are naturally gluten-free. So when I say most proteins, sometimes there may be a coating on it or something that is part of the gluten family or a product that has gluten in it. But really, for the most part, if you're getting plain old chicken, plain old fish, plain old beef, plain old pork, it's gluten-free, even if the cow or pig ate gluten. Number 3, read your labels carefully. If you do need to avoid gluten, look for hidden sources of gluten. So gluten can be found in unexpected places, such as sauces, dressings, and processed foods. So a lot of people know this. Take a look at your soy sauce and take a look at that first, second, and third ingredient. It may be surprising to people, but it straight up says right there, wheat gluten. So you can get tahini sauce instead. And number 4, balance your plate. Balance your plate with protein, healthy fats, carbohydrates from whole grains and vegetables to get that range of nutrients for your overall health. All right, so let's recap this. Gluten-free diets are essential for those with celiac disease, gluten sensitivity, but they are not inherently healthier. It can be higher in calories, higher in fat, higher in sugar if you're looking for gluten-free substitutes. A balanced diet with a variety of nutrient-dense, nutrient-rich foods is the best approach for overall health and well-being. And if you have a diet high in fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes, proteins, you're already on your way to being gluten-free. And you can include additional whole grains like brown rice and quinoa. I find that most days I'm making gluten-free meals without even realizing it. So, that's your best approach for overall health and well-being and making healthy choices. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. I encourage you to follow, go ahead and leave a review, share this episode, and stay tuned for my next episode where I'm going to address yet another common nutrition myth. All right, everyone, take care. And I just want to give you a couple of pieces of information that you can find in the show notes this week. If you're interested in scheduling a free 30-minute discovery call with me, introductory call with me to see if I can help you with some of your health, wellness, and nutrition goals, check for that link in the show notes. And then I also encourage you to check out the Real World Nutrition membership, which is now open for enrollment through July 31st, where we have all kinds of resources in that membership. There are monthly themes and goal setting sessions and live Q&A where you can ask me anything, and downloads. I have recipes, many of which are gluten-free if that's important to you, vegetarian recipes, lunch, dinner, dinner, breakfast, snacks, salads. There's a wealth of resources in there. So head on over to the link in the show notes to check out and learn more about the Real World Nutrition membership. Again, that's open for enrollment now through the end of July, and it closes at the end of July, but it does reopen later in 2024 for enrollment again. All right, everyone. As I said already, that's it for today's show. Take care and bye for now.